Welcome. My name is Kevin Cross, SVP, General Manager, NBC Sports Chicago. And on behalf of the entire network and the amazing staff here at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, I want to thank you for coming to this special occasion and talk about a topic that's really, really important, and that's mental health in sports. Now, we're going to show, in addition to showing, talking to our panel, we're also going to show a sneak peek of the documentary that NBC Sports has put together called Headstrong, Mental Health in Sports. And we're really excited about it. Now, the full documentary will air this Saturday, November 9th, after our Blackhawks game. So we hope you tune in. So with so many athletes and celebrities talking about mental health and mental stability, we think it's really, really important that these conversations go on all the time, that there's no break for them. I mean, it's a conversation that needs to happen at all times. The NBC Sports Regional Networks and NBC Sports Chicago, we really hope to shed light on the need for athletes and really everyone to talk about this on a very regular basis. And also to realize that mental issues and emotional issues are really a part of life. And more importantly, that if you're struggling with any of these, that there's somewhere to go and someone to talk to 24/7. So it's really, really important. Once again, I want to thank Northwestern Memorial Hospital for hosting this special event and really to thank them for the accomplishments that they do in the community. And to be honest with you, they deserve a round of applause, so let's thank them for that. Northwestern Medicine is nationally recognized as a health system that provides world-class care at 10 hospitals in close to 200 locations throughout the city, the suburbs of Northern Illinois. Their vision and values are deeply rooted in the idea that patients come first, and we really, really thank them for that. So again, thank you all once again for showing up for this event. We think it's really important. And with that said, let's take a sneak peek at the upcoming NBC Sports Regional Networks in Religion of Sports documentary presentation, Headstrong.
I'd like to give a hand to the people that are participating in this tonight. Yes. Thank you very much to all of you for being here. Our panel is Mike and Kim Adamle. Mike is a former Northwestern and Chicago football player who has CTE symptoms, and they've opened up about their day-to-day struggles with the disease. Dr. Gail Grabcynski, lead mental health clinician with the Chicago Bears from 2005 to 2016. She now owns Making the Difference International Incorporated and assists companies and individuals with mental health. Andrew Joy, the former mental skills coach with the Blackhawks Stanley Cup-winning team in 2015. He is the founder of the Mental Difference Sports Psychology Training and Counseling Services Center. Tori Stuckey, former Northwestern football player, community activist, author, and speaker. And Dr. Stewart Shankman, professor and chief of the Division of Psychology at Northwestern Medicine. Mike, I wanted to start with you and Kim. As you battle with CTE, and it's something that's become much more recognizable and more mainstream as we've heard that term, what is your life like day to day as you battle this?
The biggest thing is I just try not to be a burden on everybody else, because from the moment I wake up to the time I go to bed, I have someone taking care of me, whether it's medications that I need to take, rides to the airport that I can't, all these things that I used to be able to do, I can't do, just simple, meaningless tasks. But one of the things I think people who are, dealing with, head traumas, no matter what it is, I heard it time and time again, the need to be with people, to talk to people, to look in that you're not alone. And I know I'm not alone. That's probably the biggest thing that but you go back and I worry about, I want to be able to make good on some of the people that I've hurt along the way because of this crazy. My boss over there, Larry Wirt, and I've been friends forever, and he had a very difficult time to do. He had to fire me because I was just like missing things on the air that I never would think about doing in a million years, and it was really apparent. I was originally diagnosed with epilepsy back in 1999, and it happened I started collapsing on the air, you know. I didn't know how I got, like saying, no, Larry was with me, and we went over to Northwestern Hospital, and a guy named Richard Rovner, who was the chief neurological guy there, and he did a whole workup, and he said, after he was done, he said, you have something wrong with your left temporal hemisphere, and it's probably caused by, you know, football. And then he died, said you got epilepsy, so I was dealing with that as well too. But on a day-to-day basis, I got a great wife who makes sure that everything is taken care of me. I fight it all the time because it's sort of embarrassing. Guys have this problem more than women do. You know, we want to be tough. And then to have somebody have to take care of you. And I just worry about, you know, making sure that my daughters, who I love, that they've got a real father who's here to work for them and not, you know, work for himself. So I'm glad we came out like we did, and I surprised how many people it's touched, the lives and the families. Just really anecdotal. The Bears are NFL was having their 100th anniversary, and they had, before the season started, out at the Westin Hotel by the airport, they had all the decades, first the guys from the 50s, and then the 60s, and the 70s and 80s. There was a spotlight, and there's this red carpet. And afterwards, all the players were in this one room. And it would be hilarious if it wasn't so terrible, you know. You saw some of the guys that, you know, that never even knew that this stuff existed. There were people to happen. But Gail Sayers was like, you know, he was just not Gail Sayers, and the Fridge and all these different people. And it was funny, I'd see this guy I played with, you know, I'd hug him and he'd hug me, and we'd both walk in different directions going, who the hell was that? I mean, it's funny, but it's terrible. I'm just really happy that we're addressing this thing now. And I've like I said, and thanks to Kim and Larry, and I've got a group of people there. I have people pick me up, take me to this place where I work out at. People take me to, you know, and I don't take that for granted. But I wouldn't put this on anybody's shoulders. So, but I'm here to help, not to knock something. You know, I'll just say, you know, it's funny that the coach was there too. And everybody, you know, Mike, they asked him, would you do it again? He said, of course I would do it again, but I wouldn't let my grandkids touch it and get anywhere close. So I kind of summed it up for what a lot of people think today, you know. So anyway, that's just a small part of my story.
Kim, what is life like for you on a daily basis? How hard is it to deal with this?
I won't lie, it's really hard. You know, you read about caregiving and you read about neurodegenerative disease. There's a lot of Alzheimer's out there. And you read about it and you understand it and you empathize, but living it daily catches you by surprise. For Mike, I mean, you see his spirit. You know Mike. I mean, Mike says yes to life. He lives his life with zest and joy. He still does. That's how he approaches this. From my end of it, as we're partners. I hate caregiver. We're partners. We're life partners. And that's how we approach everything. We like to joke that we share a brain now. But I get as much from him as he gets from me. I take inspiration from his attitude. He approaches this with such humility and grace and strength. And that's honestly what keeps me going. The hardest part is, I I mean, you have the moment to moment. When Mike says that he can't do the simplest of things, you see him, he looks great. He's athletic still. He keeps moving. He does everything that he needs to keep himself going, to address this. But he can't operate the coffee maker. He can't do the TV remote. He has extreme difficulty doing his phone. It's the simplest of tasks. He has difficulty remembering what was just said to him. It's just pervasive in everything. So it's all about building in these systems. For me, it's like, for the parents out there, it's kind of like having, I don't mean this critically, but it's kind of like having a toddler on steroids, because he's restless, he's active, he's not withdrawn. He wants to be busy, he wants to be doing things, but the impulsivity and the lack of executive functioning ability now, you have to, it's constant vigilance. But for me, the hardest part is the slow grieving, because every day there's a little bit that slips, or you see something else, and I see this beautiful, brave man working so hard and being so brave. He never complains, never whines. And here's the other, speaking of athletes, here's his other strength. He is immensely coachable, immensely coachable. That if the situation were reversed, where he was taking care of me, I would not be so nice about it. But this goes back to his athletic training. He's a little guy, to make it in the pros like he did, and it's just amazing. And he's all heart. He's all heart. He's coachable, and that's how he is with everything that we do. I'm an educational psychologist, so everything we do is an opportunity to address the difficulties. It's a form of therapy. And so I'm either the best thing to happen to him or his worst nightmare, because everything we do.
What is it today?
I don't know. It's a toss-up moment to moment. But Mike and I, we also we work hard at reframing it, though, because you have to find the joys, find the gifts in the challenges. And our current MO, our saying, we have it. Mike has we have a big whiteboard where we put the calendar and things that we're doing and little notes, and Mike puts little inspirational sayings on it. But our motto right now is right here, right now. You can get caught up in the frustration of forgetting, of losing memory, of losing that skill. And you can get really fearful and lost and mired down in that fear of what the future will bring. But we have, right now, we have this moment, and so we explicitly try hard to find the joy and just the gifts that we have right here, right now.
Gail, you worked with former Bears wide receiver Brandon Marshall. What were the things that you learned from him? Because when he first came out, it was nowhere near as widely accepted as it is today, thank goodness.
First, Mike, thank you so much for sharing your story. Before I go on to Brandon, I have a number of NFL players that are struggling the same way, and it's tough to come out and share. So thank you, because we talk about this all the time, about being open and dealing with it, so it's impressive. With Brandon is interesting, and he continues to be an interesting gentleman. Initially, Brandon and I were struggling with connecting together because of the setup at Hallis Hall. And as a clinician, I wanted him to come into my office and talk to me and work with things. And Brandon was very much about, I want everyone to know I'm getting help. I want to be seen. I want people to see me going into your office. I want to sit out by the weight room so everybody can see me getting therapy. And so I said, well, okay, but there's going to be times we need to talk alone where you are not visible, that we need to dive into some things that potentially you do not want everyone to know about. So we were able to create some kind of balance with that. But one of the challenges that I found with Brandon and the Bears at the time was anytime Brandon had a bad day, just being grumpy or not having a good day, it was like, oh, this is the mental health issue. I was like, no, he's human. He's going to have a bad day. So everything that happened was now based on having a mental health disorder. And so I had to not only work with Brandon, but I had to teach the coaches what was the difference. How do you deal with people? There was plenty other young men on the team that had mental health issues. Brandon was the only one coming out and saying it and saying we need to make changes. But the idea of the coaches was actually our biggest problem. Coaches wanted to hide it. They wanted to put Brandon in my office and close the door and no one knew about it. They did not want to deal with it because if they knew about it, that means they had to talk about it. If they had to talk about it, potentially they had to evaluate other players or themselves. And so it's not just the players that have some challenges. As you will know, all of us have mental health issues. And so we had to deal with coaches, we had to deal with spouses, we had to deal with girlfriends. And so Brandon was like, yes, let's keep doing this. Let's keep rattling the cages and making people talk about this, because sticking our head in the sand is not going to work. It is part of the problem. So I think that Brandon really put it out there for everyone to talk about, but he really took on a lot of heat because he now was the player with mental health, and anything that was just him making a weird face, they're like, oh God, here he goes. And it was like, no, he just had gas. That was not anything else. And so, leave him alone. It's okay. So again, he kind of was the martyr for it. And I'm very proud of him. I told him before we start moving forward on this, know that this may potentially jeopardize your career. And he said, well, I've done plenty of other things to jeopardize my career, so I'm good. I'm like, okay, that's fair to say. I said, but this label will be with you forever. And some people are not so good with it. So just be aware. Let's talk with your family about it. Let's make sure both your immediate family, your wife, and your extended family, so that they understand what that is, so they too can help you navigate this. So he really is, and currently is, an impressive man that continues to move this forward. So it was an honor to work with him.
Andrew, you develop programs for high schools and for youth programs. I think back to playing small college football, where if we went and got water, we were told we were weak. This is back in the late 70s and early 80s. Weak, and far more descriptive than that, because you need water. Now we've come to this level. How do you get hard-headed coaches, because they're out there, to buy into what you're trying to get them to understand is so vitally important?
I start with the sport aspect of it, and even with kids and high school athletes that I'm working with, a lot of it is just getting them in the office, and it seems a lot less threatening with the mental health aspect when they're coming to see me due to sport. So it's a great entryway to get in there, and especially working with the athletes and the coaches is I'm going to give a workshop just solely on focus or solely on visualization or whatever it might be. And that lightens the mood a little bit, but it allows the athletes to see me present and start talking a little bit about whatever situation it is. And then they can come up, and I have a lot of them that'll grab me because still they don't want to be seen by their friends. They'll pull me aside into a corner, to a side room, and, I have this going on, I have this going on. But even at home, to what you were talking about, that stigma of being weak because you're getting water, you still hear it from the parents today is you're weak. Just get up, dust yourself off, get going again. Where there's actual problems going on with the kid, whether it's depression, anxiety, or whatever else it might be. So taking the sport approach is really interesting for me because myself, when I was younger, I went through a lot of stuff, my teens, I should say, that really changed my life. And that's where I saw the mental side of the game and just life in general really to be an important thing. So growing up and being a part of that, I really wanted to implement that so that other people didn't have to go through it the way I did. So I really try and help kids break down that stigma, say, hey, every pro team in the world is having guys like me on staff. You know, whether you're looking at hockey, football, soccer, whatever, basketball, whatever it might be, is there someone there for you to turn to that you can have, you can have that support and the help that you need. So you're not just sitting there alone feeling like you can't talk to anybody, you can't talk to your friends. So it's really nice being able to get kids into my office or at the rinks or wherever it might be, where they feel comfortable coming in, talking about sport, and all of a sudden they start bringing up other issues little by little. And that's my entryway into it. And it's really interesting for them to see that they can talk to somebody and there's no judgment, there's no anything. It's, hey, I'm here to support you. So that's how I got into it, and that's really, what the mental difference is about.
Tori, you played Division I football in the Big Ten. Same school as Mike, you went to Northwestern.
Go Cats.
We're going to be posting something on social media very soon. You wrote a suicide note to your mother.
Yep.
Would you share that story with us?
Absolutely. So just kind of give a background on that. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. If you're familiar with Chicago, I grew up in Robbins, Illinois specifically. Robbins is very poor, all-black community. I was raised in housing projects by my mother and my grandmother and my two older siblings. And so I gave you all that background, just kind of give you the framework around me. Getting this scholarship to Northwestern was like a dream come true for me, and it opened up a lot of doors for me. But it also put a lot of undue pressure on myself to help change my family environment. And so I came in as a highly recruited athlete, turning down like 25 other scholarships from Michigan State, Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, to come to Northwestern, which at that time was kind of considered the doormat of the Big Ten. But I went there because of the academics and because of the close proximity to my home, and I wanted my mother to be able to watch me play every game. And so after playing a running back for 2 years, I decided to convert to safety. I felt like that was my best opportunity to make it to the next level. And so my junior year, I just spent learning the position. Again, I played safety in high school, so I was familiar with it, but it's obviously a different level to it, playing it in the Big Ten. And so my junior year, I learned the position. I came out, I performed well. Going into my senior year, coming out of spring football, I was listed first on the depth chart. And then over the summer, we broke and got back together for preseason camp in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I walk in the depth chart, and I'm listed second on the depth chart. And I couldn't understand why. And this is my senior campaign. This is my last opportunity for me to kind of change everything that's going on with me and my family. And I can tell you this, and I really mean this. This is not like hyperbole or me trying to exaggerate or dramatize it. But I felt guilty living in Evanston. Every time I would come home and see my family situation, I would feel like I left them behind, My brother was shot on my mother's birthday going into my senior year. He was shot, but the gentleman he was standing next to was killed. And so he ran, and that's the only reason why he probably didn't end up the same way. And so this is all this stuff happening in the backdrop. I also had a teammate who got paralyzed playing football, had a teammate at Northwestern who died in front of me doing the conditioning test. So there's just a lot of stuff surrounding you that you don't really get the proper support, and you're kind of like this ticking time bomb. And so getting back to my senior year, walking into that depth chart and seeing that, something in me just kind of snapped. I really felt like I was in this doghouse that me and the head coach didn't get along with each other, and so I couldn't get out of it no matter what I did. And so I went back to my dorm room that night, and I just put out a sheet of paper, started writing as tears are falling down, and I just basically wrote a suicide note to my mother that basically said, Mom, if you're reading this, something bad has happened to me. I never intended for this. Everything I've done over the past 4 years is for you and the family. But these people have painted me into a corner where I feel like I can't get out. It's like I feel powerless. But who needs power when you have rage? And I wrote all of that and basically just said, if you're reading this, I said I'm not leaving camp unless I leave as a starter. So if I'm leaving, I'm not leaving, or I'm leaving as a starter. And I said, if you're reading this, I guess it was the latter. I folded it up, put it under my mattress, and went out to camp the next day. I isolated myself from everybody. I sat by myself, ate breakfast in the morning by myself, went out to practice, and I was a team guy. Everybody knew me. I was fun. I liked to have a good time. I saw all my teammates as brothers, but I just kind of alienated myself. And I went out there on the field, and the whistle blew. I just went crazy. I mean, like kamikaze style, to the point I got kicked out of practice twice those next 2 days. And then I had a teammate cut me in line for Gatorade, of all things. We broke out into a fight where I sent them to the hospital. And so it was kind of at that point where I felt like things were spiraling out of control because I wasn't fighting him. I was fighting this demon I was dealing with inside, right? And so the coaches could kind of see everything that was going on, I'm sure. And so after about a week in camp, I showed up into the defensive backs room, and we had a new depth chart up. And that depth chart showed me as first string. And so my position coach, Jerry Brown, at the time asked me to stay after when everybody else left. And he said, did you see the depth chart? I said, yes, I did. He said, what did you think about it? I said, truthfully, I thought it was about damn time, And he said, he laughed and said, I agree with you. He said, well, I had to have a real heart-to-heart with the head coach. He didn't want me to start you. I told him, if you want enough players to start game one, you better start them. And so he gave me the permission to go ahead and move forward with what I wanted to do. So he kind of confirmed that it was kind of some things going on behind the scenes that was kind of keeping me from getting into that position as it is. But anyway, I wrote the note. All these years later, I wrote a blog about it and then kind of told everybody and shared it to all my teammates. This was 15 years later after it happened. And I did it because of all this kind of mental health, we're talking about these days, which I think is a great thing. But at the time, I was probably suffering through a lot of depression and just didn't know it. You don't have the vocabulary or the words to kind of put around it, but just something doesn't feel right inside you. And so the title of the blog was my first and last suicide note. So for me to say, hey, that happened then, I will never allow myself to put so much stock into one thing to where I feel like if this doesn't happen, my life isn't worth living. And for football players, especially if you show signs of being good at a young age, everybody tells you this is it. So you have to eat, sleep, breathe it. And so it's not that you're not good at anything else. It's that you don't know anything else. You've pushed everything else aside to focus on this one thing. And all of a sudden, like most athletes, I don't care, even if you're Tom Brady and you're in your 40s, it feels like a rug being put out from under you when you finally let it go. Because you never want to give up this sport that you've played since you were a child. And so that was kind of the situation for me.
God bless. Dr. Shankman, there's so many great things from sports: goal setting, discipline, camaraderie, like Tori talked about. But there's also other parts of sports that can lead to mental health issues. What would some of those be?
Yeah, so just to add to what's already been discussed, I think having programs like this and videos that NBC is producing is exactly what we need to be doing to sort of try to reduce the stigma that Mike and Tori have been experiencing, where we really can sort of move toward a point where mental health issues are viewed like chronic diseases. So like nobody would have to come out that they have diabetes or come out that they have a thyroid problem, right? They would just take their medicine and move on. But we need to really be moving forward by having more awareness by programs like these for mental illness. But as for your question, all right, sports has a lot of pluses. I'm a big sports fan. I didn't play Division I sports or small college sports, but learning discipline but for people that are struggling or athletes that are struggling with mental health issues, a lot of the skills that they learned while succeeding in sports are skills that they can apply for their treatment. So goal setting, for example, of setting small goals that you can achieve incrementally that will get you eventually towards that goal of having more, for example, maybe more positive things in your life, so that you're not isolating yourself like we saw the player in the video do. So scheduling positive events throughout your day. They call it behavioral activation treatments. Whether it's another goal might be for you to journal every day, or maybe even jotting down your thoughts at all, again, similar to what we saw in the movie. Those types of things that athletes have, this sort of discipline, will ultimately help them overcome any kind of mental difficulties that they're struggling with.
I'd love for all of you to give your thoughts on this. I'll start with you, Mike. You're a tough guy. You've done the Ironman. You were this football star. how hard was it to admit I need help? And then with your partner, with your wife, to go public and say, we're going to use this horrible thing we're dealing with to help other people? Because not everyone has that strength.
Not sure where to start, but I mean, at the end of the day, everything comes down to, you want to live or you want to die, And I was never one of the last, dying was not an option there. But when we decided to do this, everything started falling apart when about 2000 and I don't know. What was your original question?
Where did you get the strength to be able to use the battle that you're waging publicly to help others?
I was in for a routine. It was like 2015, 16.
January of 16.
Yeah. I went to Rush Presbyterian and to have a workup and find out about the epilepsy, and I went through 3 days of, testing. And the doctor came out and said, Mike, it looks like you're keeping your epilepsy at bay. Whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. He said, well, we also found some things that were concurrent with CTE. And I, said to myself, I told the doctor, I said, last time I checked, people, how could you diagnose CTE when you're supposed to, wait till you go to an autopsy to find that out? And so I said, well, if that's the case, I'm going to be the poster boy and do everything I possibly can to make this public about brain injury and brain trauma. I have seen so many of contemporaries and friends who are suffering the same thing. A guy who was a brilliant friend of mine, and he was an all-pro center for the Cleveland Browns back for 13 years, and I watched him and his family sort of like just go through hell and back. He came very close to committing suicide, but he wound up, the NFL brought in a caretaker to take care of him, but he was so just out of, she had to leave, and it just, I just, there are, God, I'm really sorry about this. I'm really sorry about this. This has been a bad, nobody knows what it's like. And, I don't have any, aches or pains or whatever. I take care of myself, but you wake up in the morning, and I saw this, I was watching CNN or something. It was about the hurricanes or it was sort of like what's happening to the Arctic Circle, and the Antarctic Circle is just a big piece of ice that breaks off and it goes off into the distance. And I said, it's kind of like that, I'll wake up one day and there goes another part of, so I'm just trying to hang on as long as I can. I want to stay positive and not negative. And the time you get negative is, as everybody knows, you get in that dark spot and you can't get out of it. It's like the hurricanes, the eye of the hurricanes, you see that thing just sucking you down and you're trying like hell not to get sucked down with it. And then if you got kids, that's a bonus because you don't want to let them, they know what's going on with their dad. It makes them sad at night, I know that, but you try to have some fun with it. Like my daughter Alex is, she said I got fifth dementia. I'm one of the fifth dimension people. So, it's not the end of the world. Maybe I can't do things as well as I could do before, like talking, but it is what it is, and you go on and next day you do the same thing and you try to get a little bit better, you know. So, and I'm sorry for the tear stuff because, again, you know, guys don't, but it's something that's, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I have this little thing that triggers off my crying, and it's watching The Wizard of Oz every year. And the Tin Man goes, now I know I have a heart because it's breaking, you know. And it sounds stupid. And then I have like little notes in my medicine cabinet. So the only thing that I can't remember is I can't remember. And I was dressed up in Halloween as the Tin Man, and I had, or the Scarecrow. Now, when a man's an empty kettle, he must be on his mettle, or else he's torn apart. I guess I'm sadly presuming that I might be kind of human if I only had a brain. And anyway, I'm just rambling here. I'll be around for a while, unfortunately. So, Sony, stop me.
To the doctors and the providers, athletes don't want to show weakness. They get hurt, they get up, they find a way, they get smelling salts, they want back in. How do you deal with athletes who say, stay away, I do not need any help, I can handle this myself, when deep down they can't?
Well, I'll jump in first. A lot of my football players say that they have sweaty eyeballs. It's not tears, it's sweaty eyeballs. So I'm like, okay, whatever you want to call it, you could call it that. But I'm a woman, and so your story hit me because a lot of the players that I work with were reared with either grandmother or mother only. And so they feel more safe coming to me because I am a woman, and not that they don't go to men, but there's this sense of not having to be macho, that they can be a little bit more vulnerable with me. I'm not going to judge. So we talk about it. We talk about what's going on. I'll watch some of the film with them and like, what's going on here? And they're like, how did you pick that up? You're not even a football player. How do you know this? And I'm like, well, I can see your body has adjusted, so something must have happened. So let's talk about what you're doing with that. And so they open it up. They ask me, though, what are you going to tell the coach? And so my first thing is, you're my client, not the coach. And coaches will come to me and like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I think, you know, you need to talk to them if you want to know about that. So my clients are the players first and foremost. So a couple of them would test me to see what I would say to the coach, and it never got back to the coach. So we talk about longevity in the sport because the vast majority of my clients are NFL players. So it's a little bit different. I have some NBA, but their sport is not as physically demanding, I suppose, or the kinds of hits that happen. But we talk about that. I did have a group of young NFL players that talked about how to deal with the hits when they knew that they were going to lose. And I was a little surprised by that because some of them were like, yeah, you'll take the hit, but you won't take the full brunt of it because we know we're going to lose. We'd never tell the coach that. But it's called self-preservation, and we need to be able to stay on this field for the next game or what have you. And they started talking openly about that, and they all thought that that was the secret only they carried. And then they're like, oh, you do that too? And so it started to be okay about how do we take care of each other as well. And so creating a different sense of a team in the sense of talking to each other. I saw you took a hit. Are you okay? What's going on? I'm not going to tell, right, brotherhood. I'm not going to tell the coach, but let's take a look at that because it's real. They watch what's going on with other men. They see what's happening to other players. The interesting thing is they are the elite. So they've kind of overcome all the things that you know, it won't happen to you, you can't make it into the NFL, and all of a sudden they are that. So they think that potentially the other elements will not happen, except then they see the people that they know and care, it is happening to them. So then they talk about it very openly. As a 30-year-old man, can I function still? Which most people are just starting life at 30, and they're looking at how will I be able to. So we talk openly about it. We bring in girlfriends and wives to talk about it. Girlfriend or wife, not girlfriend and wife. Sorry, just want to make sure. So that we could talk about it, because it takes everyone to take care of that person. When they go home, does she understand? Because part of it is, when he goes home, she may want him to get up and go do particular things and doesn't understand the injuries or what have you. So then there's conflict there at home as well. So we need to educate everyone so everyone is on the same page to work for both his physical health and his mental health.
Andrew and Dr. Shankman, I'd love your perspective, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about, I mean, these techniques that she's talking about are fantastic, but it's about increasing motivation. So, you know, a lot of people, one of the big deficits in depression is a lack of motivation. Like a motivation, like nothing will end up working out, there is no hope for the future. So it's, when you're trying to engage a person who's by definition motivated, your first step is to motivate them, is to try to get them to come back for, you know, I always tell, you know, my trainees, the goal of session 1 is to get a session 2. If you get a session 2, you did your job. So it's getting that motivation in your client to try to come back for that second, oh, look, there is a hope for me. There's things that I can do. So, for example, I'm showing them that, you know, while they might say, oh, everything is fine, trying to show them, well, is everything fine? You know, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Are you performing at the level that you were? What's your mood been like? And just not saying, let's change that, but just sort of pointing out that things aren't fine. And then giving them hope that there are things that they can do to try to change their situation. Andrew?
To both their points, it's, you know, what Gail was saying is letting them know that you're on their side. So a lot of times I have high school athletes that come in and say, are you going to tell my mom and dad? And so before we initially start, I bring everybody in and I let the parents know. I said, your son or daughter is my client. Everything that happens between us is between us. I will give you an over theme of what's going on if you need to know. But if there's something severe going on, I will definitely let you know. And I will look at the client. I will say, I will let you know first that I'm going to go to your parents so that we can hash it out if you have any concerns. But I think that's a really big thing. Also, though, is just breaking down the barrier. Sometimes it's simple as just playing cards and talking about something completely random. But you listen to the things that they start putting out there. You listen to how they talk about things, whether it's something they love, whether it's about family or sport or even their dog or cat. So you just pick up on little things that they're saying, and you start picking up on how they used to be or how they want to be or how they envision themselves. Athletes do have a hard time asking for help. I'll give you a quick story. How many of you are runners in here? A couple of you? I am not a runner. I got thrown into a marathon. I don't know why my sister thought this was a good idea. I am a hockey player, okay? I run with like a skating motion. Now, here I am thinking like I'm in great shape. I'm gonna go run a marathon for charity. This is an awesome idea. Do I train? Absolutely not. I think I ran maybe 5 miles to go do it. So it's right around the 17-mile mark. I am no longer cruising by any means, and I'm no longer asking anybody for help, and I don't even know what to do. And this little 80-year-old woman comes flying by me. I wouldn't say flying, but clipping by me. She gives me a little pat and says, keep moving, honey, you're gonna be just fine. And goes about her way. And I was like, well, I just got my help that I wouldn't ask for right there. So she was my little guardian angel to finish it up. Never got her name, but. So yeah, I think it is hard for athletes to ask for help. And you have to break down the barrier for people and make it comfortable and let them know that you have their back or you're on their side.
We can take questions from our audience here.
With the programs, how realistic is it to make it even a part of the curriculum? I'll speak on personal experience, but one of the hardest things is being able to talk about or know who to go to or to even be able to open up about it. And college is one of the most isolating places there is. So whether it's high school, college, is that something where you can teach, hey, this is what the signs are, and how to open up? Is that something you can make more general?
Is that a question to me?
For
I know what I've seen in colleges is, and being a former college athlete, is I know a lot of people kind of shunned away from the student services offices. I know other colleges that have moved the counseling center next to the athletics so that people feel better about going in there, or it's not as hard as a thing to do. I think it's important to show the importance of it and teaching our students and showing things like this documentary so that we understand what we're doing and the importance of adding it into a curriculum for everybody, and use examples, use things that we've seen on a daily basis or a weekly basis of all the stuff going on in the world. They said it in the clip, and I say this to my athletes all the time, or when people ask me, because I get this question, I'm sure you do a lot, is, what problems do athletes have? They have everything they need. And I kind of look at them and said, they're people too. They have the same problems you and I have. So I think it's just showing the importance and giving people options of how to incorporate it.
You deal with a lot of professional football players. I had a professional baseball player. We got into this discussion off camera, off mic. And he said, I'm going to be a free agent one year. You think I'm going to let them know? And he didn't want anybody to know that he felt he needed help because he was afraid it would affect his income. Have you run into that?
Oh, yeah. Coaches struggle with it as well. So one of the things that I talk about, though, with anyone that I'm working with is we all have mental health. You're not unique. As a human being, we have mental health. Do we have the skills or the ability to navigate it? That's really what it is. What kinds of tools do you have to be able to deal with all the various kinds of challenges? A lot of the idea of, and you talked about it as well, feeling the need to carry your whole family. There's some that have extended families, and so there's this pressure on that. And I say to them, of course you're going to be stressed. You are now, as one individual, trying to support 25, 30 people. You're going to be stressed out. And I talk to them, and typically when I first get into a team or doing work, I sit down and eat with them. Eating they're very, you get to see everything when people are eating, and people are very comfortable eating, so you just kind of start to talk with them there. Most professional athletes, every day could be a day of being cut from the sport. Every day. And I think about, as a person that has an occupation, every day walking in, if I have a misstep, I could be fired. How horrible that and how scary that would be. And this is what these individuals are saying. And I say, that is not normal. You are functioning in an abnormal environment. You need assistance to help navigate the abnormal dynamics of it. So I encourage them to say, we all do this. We all need to talk about this. So I'm at the table for lunch talking to all of them about it, giving them little nuggets of various kinds of ideas. So when I'm walking back to my office or to my car, they'll run up and say, hey, is there somewhere else I can meet you outside of the facility? Of course, absolutely. Sometimes I'll go and do family counseling in their home because they don't want anyone to know. And I'm like, whatever works for you, I'm willing to work with you on this. I get it. You don't want to jeopardize your career. There's a limited amount of spots in the NFL and various athletic environments. So if you need to protect it, I get it. But let's make sure you protect it in the right way, meaning you protect your body and your mind so that you can move forward. Because as we know, most of the time, athletes understand that the vast majority of their sport is mental.
We have a microphone for questions.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, all the panelists. Thank you for all the responses thus far. I'm going to piggyback off of the prior question about curriculum. So there's plenty of talk in the media about mental health and athletes, and a lot of athletes are coming out about their mental health issues. But what are who can speak on the curriculum regarding the relationship of mental health with coaches and mental health literacy? Because we have the relationship with the athletes, but the ones who are really spearheading the sports are the coaches. So could anyone speak on how possible mental health literacy programs can be implemented in these environments?
I'll quickly say, when I work with the Bears, I went to the trainers and did seminars for the trainers, because the guys are sitting there and they're chopping it up, if you will, or doing whatever, and they're getting their ankles taped and what have you. So every couple months I do a training on a topic. I'd also ask them, if there's something that comes up, give me a call, I'll create a curriculum and we'll get it. We want to get these guys, or girls, excuse me, wherever you can. So, you know, in other places, in regular, the world, you do education in beauty salons because women are sitting in there and you have captive audience. The training room is a captive audience, and so I would teach them about that. So a lot of the trainers had my number and they would call me about whatever was going on with the player, saying, he kind of said something, he said, don't tell, but I'm concerned about it. So is there a way you could kind of just sit by him in the cafeteria and kind of start a conversation? So just finding your opportunities with whatever team that you have or you're working with, where are the places that people are sitting and feel most comfortable, and create some kind of program with those people and educate them.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is for Tori. Is it okay if I call you Tori?
Absolutely.
Your last name slipped by me.
No problem.
Your account was very touching and moving. I was wondering, have you thought about what would have happened if, when you came back the second time, if your name had not been number one, if it was still number two?
Absolutely. Actually, I was having a conversation with my wife when I was writing this blog. Like I said, it's probably 16 years removed from the incident, and I'd never shared it with anybody, not even my own mother. And as a writer, I'm used to kind of opening up and sharing things about my life. But this was probably one of the most difficult ones. Before I actually hit send, I hesitated because I wasn't sure how people would, interpret it. But that was an amazing kind of outpouring of support from teammates who were there. Like, I wish I could give you a hug right now. I sat right next to you. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know the depth of it. Or perfect strangers saying, this really helped me. This was really impactful for my life, and what have you. So I have thought about what would have happened and what I would have done. And so that's why, for me, it's important to make sure I'm investing in my mental health to where, like I said, I never get to that point again. I think even talking about what I do now, so I'm a writer now, but I'm, not by trade, So it was funny listening to the documentary and hearing Hayden say that he started journaling. That's exactly how I became a writer, So football's done. I go through, having a party, second day of the draft, waiting around for my name to get called. Didn't happen. Get signed to the Dallas Cowboys at the camp as a priority free agent. Get cut. I don't know if you know about NFL, but there's a lot of signing of players, but then cutting down to a smaller size of. So it's 85 or 90 guys get signed, and they get down to a 53-man roster. And so once that roster's full, you're kind of just sitting around trying to stay in shape until the next opportunity presents itself again. It's not like college or high school. You can just walk on to a team. You have to be invited in to work out, things of that nature. So I pursued that for 2 years. It was making me unhappy. I had a Northwestern degree, but I wasn't really making any money. And so I felt like I needed to journal to try to get myself out of this funk that I was in. And out of that grew this love for writing and just this passion for writing. And now, fast forward all these years, I'm on my fourth book. I don't know how many blogs and op-eds that I've written. And my programs that I do for students, my second book I wrote is called Impoverished State of Mind. It's a self-help book for teenagers and young adults living in urban poverty. And, the premise is that being impoverished is more than just a socioeconomic status. It's a state of mind, and beyond the absence of money and other necessities, it's this mind state that can prevent you from rising above your circumstances. And so you talked about motivating. And so all of it ties in together. That's really all what I'm trying to do right now. I'm dealing with a lot of young people who grew up in environments like me who couldn't run a football as fast as I could. And so they didn't have the same opportunity to get out and get a degree, a scholarship offer at Northwestern University. So they're not motivated. They walk outside, they see guns, gangs, drugs, prostitution, things that most parents would never allow their children to watch on a movie screen. They're seeing firsthand, and then they're adopting this as life, and this is helping to shape their perspective. So they're making the decisions about life from an unmotivated place. Mm-hmm. And then you question why a kid would choose to sell drugs over working at McDonald's is because they see it as a healthy alternative because they don't see themselves living beyond the age of 18. And so anyway, there's a long kind of response to answer your question. Yes, I've thought about it, and that's kind of what's motivated me to not just focus on myself, but also try to point to other people who I feel like may be in another situation where they're unmotivated or maybe even depressed or uninspired based on their circumstances.
Anybody else?
Yep,
I want to thank the panel for everything. It's been really a great information. And Mike and Kim and Tori, particularly sharing your stories, I really appreciate that. I just wanted to ask about, I'm a mental health professional. I specialize in working with athletes myself. And I feel like that we're in silos, like someone's doing something over here, someone's working over here with high school. Gail, you mentioned about female athletes. I often call them the forgotten athlete. How can we, as people in the field, really do a better job in educating athletes and coaches the services that are out there? Because there are services, but a lot of times they don't know it. We need to just communicate and connect more, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it for me is just getting in with one or two coaches and having them spread me out. Like, so if you can get in with an organization, for instance, I got in with one recently and it was literally one coach that liked me. And he pushed me out to all the other coaches and got me in that way. And I see that to be a constant theme as I'm getting in with them. And it might even be sometimes I've gone out and I've given a quick free workshop, a quick 20-minute talk on a certain subject, nothing too in-depth or whatnot, but it, kind of just scratches the surface and gives them some information and types of things that are out there so that like they can sit there and say, wow, I know I've had this, or no, I've had that, or heard about this. And oftentimes, more than not, I've had coaches come up to me and be like, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? And they'll be talking about their own issues, not even the team's issues yet. So we, once you get one of those, then, I'm like, okay, you're in. So as soon as you get the coach to buy in, it's always a good sign.
Take one more.
Echoing what everybody else said just about, thank you for being here. Happy to have gotten to know some of you guys personally. First off, Mike, I just wanted to make one comment. Never apologize for being you. Never apologize for emotion. If anything, you're an inspiration to everybody in this room and hell, well outside of this room. Okay? I grew up playing sports, the whole deal, through college, had the tough guy mentality, totally get it. But everything got flipped upside down now with kids. And I have a 9-year-old son that's been diagnosed with anxiety and OCD. I don't hide from it. We don't run from it. We were trying to figure out what was wrong with us the whole time. If anything else, we're extremely proud of him and happy to talk about it in all forums. As he braces for the formative years and probably the hardest years of his life, those teenage pre-formative years, and there's this discussion, and it's great. And I think it's great for him to be able to latch on to athletes talking about it and having maybe different kind of heroes than we all grew up with in this room. What are some other outlets outside of therapy who he has a therapist and family that knows about the problem and talks about the problem, or not problem, I'm sorry, talks about his anxiety and embraces his anxiety, and that he can go forward and live like a happy, healthy little boy and moving forward into high school? I don't really have it. It's not directed at anyone in particular, but I know the professionals who deal with it all the time. Maybe latch onto that.
Just to say it's really great that you're trying to get intervention for your son early, because that's sort of the secret for, not even a secret, but that's sort of the way to go if you want to try to intervene, is try to intervene early in young kids and adolescents. And there's a lot of great things that are out there. I mean, you said you're already in therapy and there's other groups, and as much as we don't want to have our children on screens, there's a lot of great apps out there and a lot of great self-help apps and a lot of great websites that are geared for all different ages, for all different problems, that can help kids suffering with anxiety and OCD and depression. Again, you're getting kids on screens, which we're always trying to reduce, but it's something that a lot of kids are walking around with anyway in their hands. So you're sort of getting, rather than having to schedule an appointment with a clinician and show up on a certain day, that there are these self-help apps that are really good.
We have one last one.
I have this.
Talk about triggers. Find out what the triggers are for him, understanding when he gets anxious, when he's starting to have that, and then have open discussion about that and talking about your own as well, so that he can start to realize he's normal, because some of it may feel like he's not so normal. So understanding triggers and putting things in place to deal with the triggers.
And I'll add one other thing is, as a school psychologist, but also our youngest daughter has always battled severe anxiety and depression and has been under professional care. She's now in college in Canada. And one of the most important things, our kids, when they have difficulties, Kevin, we were talking about this. So when they're younger and they have an anxiety disorder, we place these structures around them to support them and to buffer them and to help them get through. As they mature, as they get older, they can then start to acquire these coping mechanisms and be able to implement them more autonomously. And so we can start to take away our scaffolding so that they can function independently. And one of the most important things that you can teach them, and this is our daughter Alex, one of her strengths, is how to advocate for themselves. We've talked about mental illness. It's usually not a one occurrence and you're through it. It's a chronic condition that if it's not manifesting low grade consistently all the time, it's something that may pop up periodically throughout your life. So you want to teach them how to access the resources that were out there, how to advocate for themselves, and also reframing it. So it's not anything wrong with them. Everybody has something, as you said. This is your thing that you deal with, but actually, what we tell Alex is that because you have this, and just getting through your day, you are stronger than most everybody out there. Just getting through and what you're doing, that's evidence of your strength.
This is a question for the moderator. Has Major League Sports been opposed to this? I've seen this documentary, and if so, what are their involvement to make improvements with sports?
I think because it's becoming so much more widely accepted and encouraged by people like this, I think you're seeing all the major sports. We had Adam Silver, who I think is the best commissioner in any sport from the NBA, come out and say, I've got players who are, despite the tens of millions and the luxury jets and the lifestyle, they're in a very tough spot. Anxiety is a real thing, and he's embraced it. So it's great to see the major sports getting behind it. Again, Saturday night, 9 p.m., and thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for championing this cause to our panel. Thank you for being here. Mike, I'll see you at the gym. God bless you. Be there, aloha.